I was about to do a blood ritual because what I had wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to know my future. It wasn't enough to tap in and speak to ghosts and tell people what their futures were going to be and what was going to happen. I wanted more. I wanted wealth, money, jewelry. I wanted attention. I wanted all of it. I had bought a black candle. This ritual was supposed to give me material wealth because that's all I wanted. I pricked my finger. I was about to drip my blood on that candle, and I just heard a loud voice, loud as day, just say,
Summer, welcome to God's Voice today. So excited to have you on the show. We briefly connected on one of my 15-minute phone calls. And by the way, if you're watching, you have a testimony to share, why aren't you calling me? So you can schedule the phone call at godsvoicetoday.com/call. It's absolutely free. And I'd love to hear your story. But Summer, you briefly shared your story. And before we jump into your supernatural encounters, you had multiple. Can you, for everyone watching, can you kind of zoom out and paint the picture of what your life was like leading up to all those encounters?
yes, of course. So I guess I can start at an early age. I think my journey really started around like 12 years old, which is young. Um, I was very influenced by worldly things, we see it all over TV shows, movies, witchcraft. They make it look like it's so cool and interesting to participate in it. And if you do it, you get everything you want. You don't have to rely on God. You can just, handle things in your own terms and whip up a spell and get what you want, essentially. So, being young and influential and not really having guidance at the time, just to kind of paint the picture, my father's in the military, so he was deployed. So my mother was on her own. She was working. So a lot of times we were kind of left to our own devices as kids, whether someone was babysitting us or me as an older sibling was babysitting my siblings, my younger siblings. So a lot of the times I didn't really have someone there to kind of, I guess for lack of better words, whip me into shape or tell me like, hey, don't do that. Like you don't know what you're getting into. That's not what you think it is. Um, and at the time, my family was going to church. Whenever my father was present, we definitely were going to church, but we slowly just stopped. There was just a lot happening in our family. My parents had their own issues, and as siblings, we had our own separate issues in our own world at school, different activities. So everyone was very divided in my family at the time. I think that's what made me the most vulnerable, is I just didn't have that support system. So of course, I think that made me a target for a lot of what I got into. So to make a long story short, I was getting bullied and I was suffering from depression and anxiety from that bullying. Um, and I think out of anger, I blamed God for a lot of my experiences. I blamed God for the harassment. I blamed God for just how people would treat me. Um, and I think one thing led to another. I hopped online and, I started being interested in witchcraft. Like, what is witchcraft? What does that mean? Right. I remember finding like a forum, and this forum had a bunch of, very experienced witches on there giving baby witches, what they call them, advice, like newer witches or people interested in practicing the occult. So they were giving advice on things like tarot cards. They were sharing their own spells that they would cast on people. And this is like black magic. So some of these spells were like blood rituals. Some of these spells were, burying dead animals and putting it like it was very nasty stuff. Um, but I was intrigued, angry, and I think it just pushed me closer to that avenue, which was very deadly, quite literally for me. So as I learned more about it and became intrigued, and something in my head clicked, and I was like, you know what? I can get back at people by casting these spells because that's what these witches do. And one thing led to another. And I remember using one of my school journals, ripping out all of the pages with schoolwork. And I just used it as like a book of spells or a book of witchcraft. And I remember being led to write a pentagram on it, and I wrote my own little words on the first page, basically cursing anyone who tried to open it. And mind you, I was just 12 years old, so
Wow.
it's a lot. And that's when everything started. All these supernatural experiences just suddenly started in my life. I mean, I've had some before where, you see ghosts as a kid or you see like an angel, or some people see those things when they're younger. They're just more receptive to it. And I did have those experiences, but these were dark things. I've never had such dark encounters before until I started making that book. And there's quite a bit I can go over. I'll just get to the main stuff. There's a lot of seeing demons essentially. So I just want to forewarn everyone. One of the first spells that I actually casted, and this is going to sound so foolish and it truly is. It was like a spell for transformation, like a black magic spell for transformation. Essentially what this was meant to do was to make me more outwardly appear attractive to people. So this spell I was not aware of actually attracted demons. That were meant to possess you and kind of work through you, similar to like the Jezebel spirit. Um, and I didn't think anything of it, honestly. I didn't see it as bad at the time. I knew God was real, I knew Jesus was real, but I think something in me was already there just festering from the bullying and the bad experiences that led me to such darkness and led me to just be in agreement to other darkness. Um, so I casted a spell on myself and almost instantaneously, I believe it was like a new moon spell, if I'm not mistaken. And almost instantaneously, people started being hyper focused on me in school. People wanted to chat with me, but it was not a good thing. So it was like negative attention. Um, I started getting sexually harassed at school, getting unwanted touches, people I literally don't know, I'm not acquaintance with, just grabbing my butt, in gym class. And I would, tell teachers, tell whoever, and it was almost like the spell was just a curse on my life because this whatever I casted on myself, it lasted for decades. Like I would continue to see that harassment and just people turning their back on me.
Before we get back to the episode, if you're enjoying this interview, can you take a second to subscribe? It really helps us reach more people with these powerful stories. Thank you in advance. Now let's get back to the interview.
I don't know what in the world this spell specifically was. I don't even know what I got myself into, but I think that's where it all truly started. It's just the negative energy attachments just clinging to me. The negativity in other people wanted to come to me, and like I was attracting all the wrong things. All the wrong people, always in the wrong place at the wrong time. But as I grew older as a teenager, I think it was maybe like 3 years into me practicing, um, I have been stalked at night, by demonic entities. I have one encounter that truly traumatized me that I have to share. Um, I remember I think it was around my birthday, we had just got done celebrating. It was time to go to bed. I had my door cracked, and at the time in our house, my room was the furthest away from everyone. So I was all the way down the hallway. I had a library across from my room, and then the restroom on the corner. And then there's a long hallway you have to walk down to get to the staircase and to everyone else's room. So I was isolated in this house when a lot of these encounters happened. And essentially, I was going to bed. I was afraid of the dark because, of course, I was seeing stuff with the stuff I was practicing with, and I remember I think it was, like, 12 something, um, but I remember looking at my TV, and MTV was playing. I could see the little time stamp on there, so I knew what time it was, and my TV started glitching out, so, like, the volume cut out completely, and, like, you could just see those lines in the TV. And then my lamp that I had on, because I was scared of the dark, started flickering, like, really fast, like something was interfering with electronics in my room, but I could not move my body. I was paralyzed, and I was trying my best to get up because I turned my eyes to the corner where my room front door is. I had a window behind me. I could hear tapping on the window behind me, but I can't move my body. I'm looking at the front door and I see an entity's hand, like a dark, burnt looking hand, slowly pushing the door open. And obviously, I was terrified, so I just shut my eyes. I didn't want to see what it was, but I could hear it walking into my room. and I don't remember what happened the rest of that night. I just remember I was freaked out. I probably passed out from seeing it. But that was not the last time that that happened. It continued to happen sporadically, like every other night. It got so bad to I remember one point I'm pretty sure I was levitating off of my bed, because when I woke up, my body slammed on my bed and like I injured my shoulders a little bit from hitting the bed frame. So I think that's when I realized, okay, maybe I should stop dabbling in this stuff because I cannot sleep. I'm terrified to go to bed. I'm terrified to come home. I'm terrified to go in my room. Um, I just started thinking of ways to get rid of this journal, but being young at the time, I had no idea how to properly dispose of it, or to kind of cut off that connection to whatever dark forces I was in agreement to when I was casting spells. Um, and I just want to clarify when I say I was casting spells on other people and myself. So out of anger, I was, casting spells on other people like curses. Um, and then I was casting spells on myself, trying to change myself internally and externally. And at some point, my father got new orders, so we were getting ready to move. I decided to go to the backyard and bury this journal really deep underneath one of the stones. Um, and so I did that. I put the journal after digging some dirt out under one of the stones, and I put the stone on top and just put the dirt back, hoping that like no one would ever find it again. Um, and in the moving process, I remember it was raining, I could see pieces of the journal almost, like, floating back up to the surface of the dirt, but I didn't want anything to do with it, so we moved, and God bless whoever lives there now that has a journal in the backyard, but it's probably still there, um, so I did not take it with me, but I didn't I didn't go to anyone, I didn't seek any guidance at the seek anyone for guidance at the time as to what to do about that. Um, I do remember at the time my mom was kind of encouraging us to go to like youth groups. So while I was practicing the witchcraft before we moved, there was a period of time where my mom noticed I was getting really depressed and isolating myself. And she was like, hey, why don't you go invite some of the neighbors' friends or kids to go to the youth group on base? And so we would do that. And I truly believe that um, some of those leaders were very sweet, amazing people, I would never forget them. There were times where they drove us home, so we wouldn't have to walk across space in the middle of the desert, to get back home, and I truly believe that because of the stuff I was dabbling in, I was also getting negative attention in that the youth group by some of the church leaders, and it was the men, and we would have, like some youth groups would be, like, just Bible study, and sometimes it would be, like, an open just ask whatever questions you have, just make sure it's appropriate and use appropriate language. So, of course, we're teenagers, we wanna know, like, what does God think about this? Or what does God think about relationships? Or how do relationships work with God? And I remember the whole time I would mock people, very evil. I don't know what was working through me at the time, but I would mock people in the youth group. I'd be laughing at people. Anytime someone would pray over me, I just I had an aversion to it. I didn't care for it. So I would openly disrespect Jesus. I would openly mock God in this youth group. And I could tell people were upset, but I know some of the youth group leaders, especially the women there, were just honestly trying to lead me back to a better path. They didn't know what I was doing, but I'm sure they kind of had a feeling something else was going on. But a lot of the youth group leaders that were men, when I say this spell truly did attract negative attention from the wrong people, some of these youth group leaders actually turned out to not really be Christians. They were just kind of using the youth group to seek out younger girls. Which we found out when we moved. There was a few of them that got in trouble for it. They were kicked out of the church. But some of these leaders would openly try to make passes at me, constantly commenting on the clothes that I'm wearing when I'm walking in. Mind you, we live in the desert, so people are going to wear shorts. People are going to wear t-shirts. It's hot. No one wants to wear full sleeves. Um, but they were constantly, making fun of people's bodies, and it was just very inappropriate. And I don't blame now that I'm older, I don't blame the church itself for that, but as a young child, I didn't associate that with just individuals, like wolves in sheep's clothing, because that's truly what they were. They should not have been there. And the church should apologize for the mistake of letting those people run the youth group without running a full background check. But some of those people should not have been around kids, and I'll just leave it at that. Anyways, I'll just move forward. So we moved. My father got new orders. We moved to a new place, and trying to be cryptic because I don't want people to know like the places I've lived in. Honestly, I'm very private about that. But we moved to a new base, and instead of practicing witchcraft, because like I said, I tried to put all that behind me after I buried that journal, even though it was summoning some really dark stuff. This was around the time where like new age spirituality was a thing. So like meditating. Everyone wanted to be a Buddhist, everyone wanted to do yoga. It was like that movement. Um, New age books were all over Amazon. You can go to Barnes and Nobles, and it's just nothing but new age everywhere. So once we moved, that's kind of my new thing that I got into, or that was my new thing that I got into, was like the new age spirituality. Um, and nowadays, that's something that I try to tell people to be more mindful of, because a lot of new age spiritual practices like tarot cards, I don't fully believe meditation is in itself is evil, but when you're when you're un how do I say this? When you're unexperienced in certain spiritual things, you don't realize it, but you tend to open up a window for something to come through, and you can't control what does. A lot of this new age practices encourage that. So I was meditating. At the time, I started taking drugs. Um, I was taking drugs, I was smoking weed, whatever was available in my peer group. I was hanging out with the wrong crowd, and a lot of times in these meditations, I would see dark things, and I would just kind of pass it off as like, "Oh no, it's part of becoming, enlightened," is what they call it. Is you have to go through the darkness first, and then you'll find the white light somewhere, not knowing that the white light is actually Satan, truly, but there's a false light that new age spirituality tells you to kind of chase, like, to reach enlightenment, you have to go through all the darkness, and you have to accept darkness in your heart, and you have to work through it. And though I understand some people misinterpret that as like, "Oh, they just mean, like, working through your trauma." If you look at it on the spiritual spectrum of things, when you're in any agreement to darkness, you're opening yourself up to darkness, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Darkness is darkness. I'm not saying that if you experience darkness in your life that that necessarily makes you a dark person, but what I'm saying is when you're practicing something spiritually and you're actively trying to connect to something else, you're almost forming a relationship to the other side, to something that you can't even see. You don't even know what it was. And a lot of the times these things are demons, and they disguise themselves as angels. A lot of these demons are fallen angels, so of course they're going to disguise themselves as that. Um, and basically, all that to say, in a lot of these spiritual experiences, I started having things like sleep paralysis again. There was a period of time where, like I said, in the old place, I would have sleep paralysis and see these creatures, whatever they were, come into my room and like stalk me and mess with me. Um, it stopped once we moved, but I think it kind of caught up shortly after. And me engaging in like meditation and also taking drugs just kind of, I think it disconnected me from that protection that God was truly trying to put over me. Um, a lot of times when you're hindered in your state, your mental state, your physical state, you're more susceptible to these spiritual attacks. And that's not something I was aware of at the time either. So um the sleep paralysis started again. I continued to see things walk around my room. I couldn't move. There was one point where things were literally standing over me on my bed and touching me, hitting me, scratching me, whatever. And I would just have to endure those experiences. And a lot of the experiences, I just want to say, still traumatize me to this day. the stuff that I saw. I'm trying to be cryptic about it because talking about it is very triggering for me. But I saw some really ugly things. I mean, like I've seen things that looked burnt, that literally looked like they crawled out of the pits of hell. I've seen like winged creatures. I've seen like bloody, like skin dripping, weird, melted looking things just crawling around my room. Like just these weird, dark entities just harassing me for years. And it didn't stop. I didn't have the knowledge to connect that my new age spirituality was a new form of witchcraft. So I was still essentially practicing witchcraft. I was getting into tarot cards, which is a whole nother thing. I was getting into tarot cards, so opening myself up more and being more susceptible to these attacks. Still in my head, not making those connections. Anytime I would tell someone about it that was Christian, bless their hearts, like my Christian friends, honestly, I would openly disrespect them and I had no remorse for it. Like nothing in my heart felt bad about what I was doing at the time. I would mock Christians for their beliefs. I would mock Christians for praying over me, even though they meant well. I was just still in that really ugly space. So I guess I forgot to mention my suicide attempts in the previous place I lived. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place right now. But I guess I'll visit that real quick because my second attempt was in the new place that we lived in. But previously, I did try to take my life. I hung myself and I just kind of laid there and I triple knotted the rope. So there was no way that I felt that it was going to break. So I just kind of laid there and waited. And I think God came through. I remember seeing like a bright, warm light just flash in the room right before I was going to pass out, and the rope just snapped. It just snapped after being, like, triple knotted. So despite that experience, I think that's what led me to bury the journal, and just being spooked by what I saw. I still did not go to God, even though he saved my life. So the second time in this new place that we lived, I turned to drugs to try to take my life. I purposely tried to overdose on some pills that a friend had given me. I'd stay the night at her house in hopes that it would just, happen. And I didn't see anything in that experience, but I just remember waking up in the morning and just feeling deep regret. Like suddenly my heart could feel things again. It was so weird. It was like all those emotions and like the anger and sadness that I buried through the witchcraft and the new age practices and pretending, it's all love and light and, there's nothing to worry about, just meditate on it. Like everything actually came flooding back after that attempt. And it was like I could feel again. I'd been numb for years once I got into that, those practices. Um, well, one thing led to another. I think I slowly started waking up to what I was doing. But again, I did not want to let go of my practices because that is how, at the time, I was coping with just life. Anything that was tough in life, I was turning to that. Um, Senior year of high school, my biological father had passed away suddenly. And we already had a rough relationship. And, my stepfather did his best to come through and, take care of me and be there for me at the time. But I did what I, created a habit of doing, just isolated myself from everyone. I didn't want anything to do with anyone. No one knew how I was feeling. No one knew what I was going through. I didn't want to hear it. And this pushed me again to go back to new age spirituality, but now I was taking it up a notch. I was returning back to the occultism aspect of it. So it started out, with witchcraft. I thought I put it all behind me. And then I guess the trauma that I was enduring, I just didn't know how else to cope, but what I was familiar with. And that's what I knew at the time. Even though my mother was leading me to the church, even though my stepfather was trying to be there for me, um, I just chose that over both of them. And I stopped doing the meditations. I stopped practicing yoga, and I started using tarot cards. So that was like my new fix. Um, I would use tarot cards every single time I had a question. Every time I was scared of the future. I didn't want to have to wait and be patient like God tells us to, and let God work his plan. in my life. I just wanted to know everything, which is not healthy. It's not healthy at all. It creates a very unhealthy mindset of control. You try to control every aspect of your life when it's not possible. And then when something goes wrong, it just keeps pushing you closer to that practice. Like, oh, okay, well, maybe next time I'll listen to what the cards say, or maybe I misinterpreted what the card said. It's like, no, it was the cards that was misleading you, but I didn't understand that. So we moved again. My father got new orders. Um, this time we returned to my home place of birth. We decided to come back and live with family so I could grieve over my father's passing and get closer to his family. It was just a decision for me and my siblings as well. Their fathers lived in this place. So my stepdad at the time, he finally was slowing down in life after being deployed and enduring his own stuff. So he was more present at the time. And he started challenging me openly about what I was practicing. And I did not like that. Um, I he himself is not super religious, but I think he knew whatever I was practicing was just encouraging me to stay on that dark path. Isolation, anger, and it's just like this vicious cycle. Like you people try to help you, but you're scared of connection, so you just isolate, and it just doesn't stop. It's a vicious cycle. Um, my stepfather was trying to point that out to me and telling me like, "Hey, um, maybe you shouldn't be clinging to tarot cards or whatever is interpreted in the cards to make decisions in life," because that's honestly what I was doing. Before I accepted a job offer, before I entered a relationship, I would go to these tarot cards, and these tarot cards ruined my life. They ruined my life. They were leading me to unhealthy partnerships. They were encouraging me to stay in relationships that were abusive. Um, and because the card said I should stay, I just stayed. And I didn't think anything else of it. And when anyone challenged me, I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I have the cards, I have the gift, I have it all. Like, I already know what's going to happen. I don't need you to tell me anything. Um, I became very prideful, very controlling, and I thought at one point that I was honestly above God. I was like, I am a god. I am a goddess. I have this ability to tap into the other world and speak to the dead, and I have this ability to pull out the cards, and they'll tell me everything I need to know. And honestly, it just led me to having no friends, no one around me that wanted to really sit with me because I think I was obnoxious to be around. I'll just blatantly say that. Openly, I can say that I was obnoxious to be around. No one wants to be around someone that's prideful and a know-it-all, and um, I honestly pushed out a lot of good people from my life just practicing tarot cards. That was the root of it. I didn't know that at the time. Anyways, to move forward, I moved out of my parents' house. Um, there were some issues going on at home and we were just butting heads, and I was tired of my father telling me like, "Oh, well, maybe you shouldn't practice that kind of stuff." It got to the point where, and I think I mentioned this in our phone call, um, I was about to do a blood ritual because what I had wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to know my future. It wasn't enough to tap in and speak to ghosts and tell people what their futures were gonna be and what was gonna happen. I wanted more, and I wanted wealth, I wanted money, I wanted jewelry, I wanted attention, I wanted all of it, like, all the material things that truly don't satisfy us. I wanted it at the time, and I have no idea what in the world was in my mind, or what was going through my mind at the time, but prior to in the process of moving out, I believe it was. So in the process of packing my stuff and getting ready to move to my apartment at the time, um, I had bought a black candle. It was like a waning or waxing moon, I don't know, something to do with the ritual. This ritual was supposed to give me material wealth because that's all I wanted. I didn't care to have like fulfilling relationships. I wanted a husband. I didn't care who it was. I wanted an attractive husband. I wanted all the surface level stuff. So this is where the tarot cards led me to, is what I'm trying to explain is, I started slowly making my way back to God, and I just wasn't ready, and I think I clung to that darkness, and that darkness led me back to, like, darker stuff over time, slowly but surely, because that's how it makes your way into your life, is it's not obvious at first that it's gonna destroy your life and lead you down this path of just being isolated and miserable and hateful towards everyone and anything. Um, it started out as meditation and peace and love and yoga, and then it led to tarot cards, and then it led to a black candle ritual. Essentially, I pricked my finger. I was about to drip my blood on that candle, and I just heard a loud voice, like loud as day, just say, "Don't do that," like really loud, and it spooked me, and I jerked my finger back, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing?" Like I almost did a blood ritual. I would have been gone. Like, what am I thinking? So I just burned the candle out. I tossed the candle in the trash, and I was like, "What am I doing with my life?" Like, I don't know who I am right now. God tried to bring that feeling back into my life where I could feel things again because I pushed it away for so long, and I was so scared and just clung to things that numbed me to the pain, which was tarot cards. It wasn't just tarot cards either, part of it was astrology. I was obsessed with astrology. I was just obsessed with knowing the future. Um, I was obsessed with being my own goddess, and I wanted all the male attention, and I was very sexually deviant as well. Like I was sleeping around with people once I moved out because I had that freedom now. I was doing whatever I wanted, binge drinking. I was drinking right after I got home from work. I was even drinking some mornings before I went to work. It led me to alcoholism. It led me to drug addiction. I was still smoking weed constantly, like every single. I just did not want to feel anything. Like it was I didn't have that ability to cope, but also I was just comfortable in that darkness. Um, it got to the point where I was and I feel shameful saying this, but it's part of my testimony. Um, it got to the point where because I wanted material things, even though God literally told me not to do that ritual, I still, I would do candle that's called candle magic. And in my head, the way that I thought about it as not being as bad as like the blood ritual was, oh, well, it's just, it's like white magic. And that's something we see nowadays in a lot of media as well is, well, it's not the dark magic. You're not like selling your soul. It's just, you're just asking for money or you're asking for a house or you're doing a love spell. And, it's not bad. But we're still going against people's free wills when we're casting these spells. So I attracted a lot of bad people um, into my own home at that time, and they were bringing bad things with them. I'm talking like offering drugs to me, offering to pay for alcohol, in exchange for like sex. In exchange for sex, they were taking me out for dinner. Um, I don't think it really ever hit me that that was not healthy for me. Then, um, you know, I finally got tired of it. It was boring to me, so I stopped doing that. And the next big thing was, well, I want to make money off of doing tarot cards. I want to make money off of speaking to the dead because, God gave me a psychic ability. Why am I not allowed to use it? Um, so I started a whole business on doing tarot readings for people. Um, and I would make money off of those tarot readings, and that wasn't enough. So I was like, I want to kick it up a notch. I want to test myself. So I started selling psychic readings next. So I was doing seances in my apartment. I was literally talking to dead people, which is necromancy. That is a big no no in the Bible. And it was making my life hell. Like I kept experiencing bad things everywhere I went, and something was still not clicking for me. It was like, "Oh my goodness." God was probably like, "Girl, I'm trying to help you." Um, there were people that I would come across or encounter in, like, the workplace who were Christian, and when they heard I was practicing and what I did, they would kinda side-eye me, and they're like, "Are you doing okay? Like, do you want me to pray for you?" And I'm like, "I don't want your prayers. Like, I don't want anything to do with Jesus, like, whatever." Um, a couple of years into doing this practice, um, I started getting very bad nightmares. So I was still seeing stuff at night. It just became my new normal. Like it became my new normal to see ghosts and dead people standing in the corner of my room and to hear voices like arguing with me and just very demonic experiences. I just normalized it because that's all I knew for most of my life. Um, and to me, the way that I coped with it was, well, it's a gift. Like I could talk to dead people. That's awesome. Like, why would God give me that gift? Not realizing that actually that's a form of demonic possession. Um, so things were clinging on to me everywhere I went. I continued to attract bad people. Like I was going in and out between these jobs, and there would always be that one person in the workplace that I just felt had it out for me, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Like there were people that would try to physically harm me at work. I mean, like throwing things towards me and playing it off as like, "Oh, I didn't see you there." Just the harassment didn't stop. Like the devil truly was working through other people to push me further into that darkness. Well, I finally found a job that I started enjoying. I was in a leadership position. I felt that I had the skills to really handle it, even though I had no accountability still for things I was doing spiritually to people. And there was a witch that I met who started working at this workplace. And I think I finally met my match because this woman, surface level, said she was Catholic. She said that she was a Catholic woman and, she would always wear a cross and she was always talking about God whenever there were people around. And then somehow she found out about me doing tarot readings from my other coworkers. And, mind you, she was, like, a higher up, so she was, like, in a higher leadership position than me. Her job was essentially to make sure I was doing my job, so that I can take care of everybody else. And so she would come in every now and again, and we'd have, like, small talk. Well, the small talk turned into her, like, mocking people. We would have customers that were openly Christian, very sweet people, very loving people. They would bring me and my coworkers food. They would pray over us when we were having a hard day. Very loving people. God was really working through these people to show me his love, like constantly. I remember a few times, like, I was on the verge of crying from being stressed out with bills and like, just living on my own and also having to manage a whole clinic by myself. And there was a woman that would come into the clinic and she'd be like, I'll pray for you. When I go home, I'll pray for you. So there are a lot of figures like that in my life. Around the time as well, I got reconnected with my grandfather, Reverend Taylor, who has a long relationship with the church and God. He is a very godly man. I love my grandfather. He was like the father figure that I think I really have been needing in my life. And he's the reason why I'm here today, honestly. Once I came clean to my grandfather about like the practices, he was also really telling me to stop, but I just was not ready to accept God yet. But anyways, going back to this woman, um, for some reason, she stopped liking me. It wasn't that I was, like, being rude to her, I wasn't doing anything to provoke her. I was always listening to the advice she said about work or how to do things better, but for some reason, she started spreading rumors about me. I just don't know what her problem is. Um, and we were having small talk one time, even though I was aware she didn't like me, and for some reason, she just openly admitted that she was a witch. I don't know why. I truly don't know why. I don't know if it was because of prayers, people were praying over me for protection, and the darkness just revealed itself through these prayers, but she just casually admitted that she was a witch and that her cousins practice witchcraft with her. They practice it together, and her cousin owns a botanical, and they sell, like, spiritual jewelry, and they put, like, spells on jewelry and so and so. Um and that kind of raised my eyebrow a little bit because I was like, okay, maybe God is real. Because once these people really started praying for me and praying for revelation in my life to bring me back to God, God really like pulled the veil off, not just on my own practices and things I was doing, but also just exposing other darkness and people. or dark people in general, like witches, people who had ill intent towards me was revealed like suddenly in 1 month. It was a very intense month. The year was already rough for me, so I was like, "This is a lot to handle." Um, so I would start talking to God around this time as well, and I was like, "God, I think I've been, pushing you away for a long time, but you never stopped loving me, so thank you for that." And the more and more I talked to God, it was like things just naturally revealed themselves around me, and I think that was God's work. I truly do. This woman took it up a notch, and people at work started mysteriously getting injured, um, because she said something inappropriate and we reported it to our HR department, and that's when, like, the warfare really got kicked up for me and for other people around me at this workplace. I think she started targeting us because we were calling out the inappropriate things she would say about Christian people walking in the clinic. Like, there's legal protections when you work in the medical fields, when it comes to, client privacy and dignity, and she was violating that, just to give you an idea. And so even me practicing witchcraft knew that that was a no-no, in the professional realm. So that's why I started reporting it. And then that's when we started seeing people getting hurt at work. So at another clinic, another leadership person, I'm trying to be cryptic, another leadership person mysteriously fell down a flight of 3 steps and broke their ankle somehow. Like, that's how odd these occurrences were around this woman. And it was after this person openly, directly called them out, like, hey, you can't say that about people. And then a couple days later, their ankle's broken. Same thing happened with my other coworker. She left for lunch and did not come back, and I called her, and it turns out she had gotten into a car accident and her car flipped. And this was after she literally just called HR and reported it. And then my other coworker, male coworker at the time, his car just suddenly stalled in the middle of the road on his way to work after reporting her as well. It was very odd. Um, and then it got to the point where at home, I started seeing demons walking around. Um, at this time, I'd got into a new relationship, with a very lovely person, and he was encouraging me to go back to God as well, even though he himself is not, he was baptized, he grew up Christian. He himself is not openly or actively Christian, but for some reason, he was led to tell me to go back to God. So I started praying over our apartment. I started seeing flies like just manifest out of thin air. Um, and it was like the more and more I was around this woman, I would start seeing more things. So it wasn't just like the night terrors now that I already was experiencing throughout my life. Now it was every single time I have a negative interaction with this woman, something bad happens to me or my coworkers, um, or something in life just doesn't work out. I can't fully blame her for that either. Part of that was just already what I was inviting, and I was already vulnerable to it. But like I said, I think I met my match with this woman. Um, then it got to the point where I fell so sick. I was out of work for like a whole week. Mysteriously, I was sick. I went to the ER. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. They did tests. They were like, you don't have the cold. You don't have the flu. We don't know why. Maybe it's just allergies because they had no idea what was going on with me. I mean, like, I was throwing up. I had on and off fever. My body was like fluctuating in energy. I just felt like I think it was truly an attack. Um, Long story short, one day me and my boyfriend left to go get food, and this is around the time I was already sick. So we left to go get some food up the street. Before we even left, I remember looking up at the clouds and I was just mesmerized. Something about the clouds is very odd. I still have a picture of it. Um, Something about the clouds was very odd. It was like a beam of light was beaming down directly, hitting my apartment. Like the clouds, it had been raining on and off, but the rain clouds were gone. The clouds were like perfectly white and just mysteriously in the sunset, the sun was like beaming down directly on my apartment. It was almost like God was telling me, like, don't leave, like, just stay right here for a second. But I ignored it. I even had a feeling in my heart that something bad was gonna happen, but I ignored it as I did with everything at the time. And so anyways, we left to go get the food. On our way back, we're getting ready to turn into the corner. So we have like a 3-lane road that we lived on at the time. It was very dangerous. You would have to sit in the middle lane and try to turn into the apartment complex with cars coming like 40 miles per hour down a hill. So a lot of times they didn't see you when you were trying to turn. So we sat there for a while until we saw the red light come on, up the hill, and the car stopped. So my boyfriend was getting ready to turn. All of a sudden, traffic just starts, which is odd because that's not normally the pattern of the lights. Not just that, but in the middle of the 3 lanes, the car just stops. The car just shuts off. And I turn to the side like this, and I see a black car zooming through all the traffic really fast. And the guy looks at me directly in my eyes with a dead, like, blank stare and rams into us. And the car goes flying 6 times down the hill. It crushed the whole car in on itself. I mean, like, none of the doors could be opened. It was like you would think that we took it to, like, a tow service to get it crushed, or I don't know how to explain it. It was just odd how we survived. But essentially, in the middle of the car crash, I remember just, like, I was so breathless. It was like time froze for a second, and I was just crying out to God, and I was like, "God, I know I did evil in my life. I really hope you can forgive me. I am so sorry for everything. I know what I did was wrong." I was repenting right then and there. I was like, "Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. I've ruined a lot of lives. I've ruined my life. I've been working against you and not listening to you." And I just heard a voice very loud in my head, and it was like, "You're gonna stop the tarot cards. You're gonna shut down your business, and you're gonna share your testimony." And that was like my deal with God, for lack of better words. I don't know how else to explain it, but God was like, I think he accepted my repentance, I would say, because I would have died in the car crash. Especially my side of the car got really crushed in. Um, anyways, we were stuck in the car for like a couple of seconds before I came to. I was kind of crying and traumatized. And somehow, I don't know how, the other windows did not get shattered or crushed, but they were like crushed inward. My window was completely blown out. So I had a way to escape. My boyfriend couldn't even get out of his side of the car, like, the car was crushing him in, the door was forcing him to stay there, but somehow, my side of the car, I was able to jump out. I just unbuckled, I hopped out of the window, and I went and grabbed our dog in the back, and we waited for emergency services to come, and my boyfriend came out untouched. Um, I suffered a lot of injuries, of course, the type of impact that we had, but I wasn't able to walk for, like, weeks. I needed my boyfriend's help to just stand up. I couldn't walk far, so I was stuck in bed for a couple of weeks, and during that time, I was just like, "Why did you save me, God?" Like, I disrespected your son. I led a lot of people down a dark path. I was miserable, I rejected you. I didn't want anything to do with you. Why did you save me? And I would have days where, like, I would kind of answer my own question. Like, maybe God really does have a plan for me. Maybe I do have a purpose in life. Um, but I remember hearing that voice in my head again, like, how did I hear that voice during the crash? What was that? And I just kept questioning it. Um, and I told my grandfather about it. He was like, "That was God. That was God talking to you." And I'm so grateful. Like, I'm so grateful I'm alive. I'm grateful I'm here. I've never been so grateful in my life just to be alive and to walk and to exist. And every single day that I wake up since the car crash, I have been praying to God, thanking Him and saying, "God, order my steps. Tell me what you need me to do because I owe you everything." Um, so after the baptism, I think I really secured that covenant with God. And I'm here today because I want to share my story, not just about, my journey with rejecting God, but I know a lot of people nowadays are probably misled, by the media, the movies, the music industry that we listen to, the music that we engage in so much, a lot of this stuff is like a tool for the devil to slowly but surely lead you down that path. And I think I really fell victim to it because throughout my whole life, God was constantly saving me from literal death. Um, and it wasn't until that experience that I think God just finally spoke and was like, "You're gonna share your testimony. This is what you're gonna do." So that is why I'm here.
Hey, want to hear raw supernatural conversations with people who call me every single day, sometimes weeks or even months before they share their story on the show? Up until now, I've kept those early calls tucked away on the hard drive, but now I'm finally sharing them with members as a small thank you for supporting this podcast. And that's just one of the perks. You'll also get to join me live on future interviews. You'll get to listen in and even ask questions at the end. Spots are limited, so don't wait. Hit that join button below or head to godsvoicetoday.com/join for more information. And now let's get back to the show. Well, I love that because I'm in the testimony sharing business. I love sharing testimonies. And, it's interesting. When I had my face-to-face encounter 9+ years ago, that's what Jesus told me. He told me that he wants me to share these testimonies. And it's interesting how God just sends me people like you every single day. I take, 6 to 8 phone calls, sometimes less, sometimes more. And
Mhm.
it's testimonies like I have more testimonies to share than I have time for it. In fact, I'm actually thinking about starting a second channel. I'm going to call it Kingdom Trophies, where I will have people record their testimonies and just send them to me so I can publish them
Oh,
as
that's
quickly as I
wonderful.
can. But your story, wow. So 3 things. He said, stop tarot cards, right? Shut down the business
Yes.
and then
Stop.
share. Yeah, and then share the testimony. So right here, you're sharing your testimony. I am curious, what did that voice sound like? Was it more of kind of like spirit to spirit, or did it have a voice? Did you hear like an audible voice?
It was very odd. It wasn't like how we're speaking now. Like, it wasn't audible, it was almost like telepathic? I don't know how to describe it. It was like a spirit voice, but it was very stern. It was very stern, but like a loving voice like a father would be. That's how I describe it. Like, it sounds like a stern, loving father telling you, like, "Quit it out. I love you. I need you to do this instead. I'm trying to help you." Um, it really shook me, though. It shook me to the core. It woke me up.
Absolutely. Well, wow, amazing. It's something you mentioned how in this world, if you're not intentional, it's kind of like if you leave the building the way it is, if you don't upkeep it, don't maintain it, nothing, nature takes over, right? The sinful nature, so
Yes.
to speak, is like the weeds will take over everything. Same thing in this world. If you just leave things up to chance, it's like, everywhere you go, everything is designed to hurt you in some way, shape, or form. You go to the gym, the
Yes.
music that's playing, it's there to deceive you, distract you. The food has, gosh, all kinds of ingredients to kill
Oh,
you.
yeah.
The air, everything's designed to kill you, destroy you, right? But that's why you got to be so intentional. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is sickness.
Yes.
Ignorance is uh, all kinds of destruction, financial ruin, ruined relationships. And so I love when you said that, music, everything is around you designed to take you to hell, right? But you
Yes,
got
the
to you got to be
devil
intentional.
works his hardest to try to take you down there. So you
Mm.
really have to be aware of this. I mean, God tells us to not be of the world for a reason, because this world is truly by nature wicked. There's everywhere, like you said, everywhere you turn, the food you eat, you go to a fast food restaurant, there's chemicals in it trying to kill you. The music you listen to, you go online, social media, there's like pornography essentially all over it. The world is designed to encourage you to sin.
Well, who's the prince of this world, right?
Exactly.
He's trying to deceive you, derail you, and you got to be intentional. You got to take time and think for yourself, so to speak. But another thing you said, it's interesting. All this time, you're seeing demons, all this darkness. It's like you didn't have a hard time believing in the dark side, but I remember you
Mhm.
mentioned during your testimony, you mentioned that at that moment you knew that God is real. But I just had a discussion about this not too long ago with somebody. I can't remember who it was, but we were talking about
Mhm.
how it's for some reason people believe like horror movies and scary movies. They believe that there's something
Yes.
dark out there. But the idea of God, loving God, they just people have a hard time with that for some reason.
I honestly think, just from experience, it's because if you acknowledge that God is real, then you really have to hold yourself accountable for your
Ooh.
actions. So that's why a lot of people are just in agreeance to darkness, because no, darkness is not gonna hold you accountable, it's gonna encourage you, it's gonna enable you to go down that path. But if you turn to God, you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to wake up every day and carry that cross.
Mm. Speaking of
Mhm.
the cross, it's interesting that that witch you were talking about, that she was wearing a
Mhm.
cross and she was, in a way, a Catholic Christian disguised as a Christian.
Mhm.
But interesting that she had a cross on.
It is interesting. I've actually done my research since that experience. Apparently, it's a common thing. Apparently, some witches try to infiltrate the church. There's sometimes secret covenants, like witchcraft within a church. I've talked to my mother about this, and she admitted, like, in her youth, there were witches that attended her church, like witches that would do do spells on people. They would have, like, meetings at night, or, like, they would have, sleepovers together and just, partake in sin, but then would go to church on Sunday and have, like, this whole other, like, facade, like, they're godly, and I would never do that, and, they judge other people for it, but it's like they're really doing it themselves, and they work for the devil. They're the devil's tool.
Yeah, recently I had somebody on the show that was going to a Bible school to get closer to Jesus, to have more knowledge. But the person that was over the admin was a witch. She took her in, and then,
Mm,
boy, she was in for a treat. That's for sure. It took her years to
yes.
get out of that bondage. But yeah, there are a lot of witches are comfortable in churches these days. That's for sure.
Honestly, I remember I had like a discussion of sorts with God about this, and just asking for revelation, like, why is this a thing? Like, because right now I'm trying to find a home church, and a lot of the churches that I go into, it's just something is really off about it. Something is off, something is dark. I'll share like bits and pieces of my testimony, and it's almost like they're disgusted by it, or it's almost like they don't want to hear it, or they don't want to amplify the word, or like the church is not actually speaking the gospel, they're like speaking opinion or politics, and it's just very odd. But in a dream, God actually revealed to me that, like, unfortunately, darkness has infiltrated the churches, especially in our country.
Well, if you think about it, if I were the devil, that's probably what I would do, right?
Exactly, that's the scheme.
Preying on vulnerable people, people that, open up their hearts, go to church, and you meet them there. Oof. Another thing,
Mhm.
you talk about jewelry and casting spells on all that stuff, even like the journal that you buried. Interesting. How true is it that you hear that all the time? Somebody purchased something from a vendor that's like
Mhm.
some kind of satanic jewelry piece. They didn't know, they just thought it was a cool thing, and then all hell breaks loose when they take it in the
Mhm.
house. So you sharing that, you saying that, so you got to be very careful what you bring in the house, so to speak, right?
Yes. There's a thing right now on Christian Talk, I guess. A lot of women are trying to spread awareness about where they buy their jewelry from, because actually it is a form of witchcraft that witches will cast spells on their jewelry to bring you back to their shops, to bring them more income. They put money spells on that jewelry, but attached to those spells are dark things as well. A lot of shops will put like powders on the top of their doors, so when you walk in, that powder will fall on you, and that's a form of witchcraft. You have to be mindful of what they're actually selling, because just because a place sells a cross, it doesn't make it like a Christian godly place. Witches wear crosses all the time. It's a form of them openly disrespecting and mocking God, because they'll wear a cross while practicing witchcraft. So you have to really be careful who you're getting these things from.
Hmm. It's interesting because one of the most famous witches, she's so famous that I don't know her name, but I've seen her all over the web where she's into fashion. She's just, she looks like a witch. You
Mm,
know how like you would,
I know who you're talking about. She's very scary looking.
yeah, scary. And her husband doesn't look nice either. Like very too scary looking people. But for some
Mhm.
reason, all the celebs just admire. that couple. And again, I don't know their names, but I just remember you said fashion, just jewelry and all that stuff. Yeah, they're into that now, and a lot of it is just like high end fashion too,
Yes.
where it's like almost
Yes.
identity switch. Like the once you wear their stuff, it's like you change your identity or so or something like that. I don't know, just
Exactly.
guessing here, but wow, interesting. What you don't know is destroying you. Ignorance is not
Mhm.
bliss. That's just the truth. But
Definitely.
another thing you mentioned about normalizing demonic activity, I'm sure people listening, watching to this, some people probably are so used to demonic activity. Like I remember my hairdresser was telling me how sleep paralysis and like demonic activity around the house is like that's all she knows, and she normalized that and lives with it. I remember telling
Yeah.
her like, "This is not normal. You shouldn't live like that," right?
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the recent one of my recent interviews. Forget the guy's name now. I'm so sorry, but he had a face to face, a Muslim face to face encounter with Jesus,
Mhm.
and Jesus took all his burdens, everything away, his anxiety, stress. And he said, "Wow!" When he came back, he just didn't know you can feel this free. It's like a ton of bricks just lifted off of him, right? He felt free, kind of like
Yes.
childlike. He's just like, it's
Mhm.
amazing. But it's kind of like this whole analogy of boiling a lobster. Change is so subtle when you boil somebody. A lobster is boiled, it's warm. Before you know it, you're kind of in the middle of it all. But same thing over all these years, when we kind of accumulate all these demons, these bad habits, these things, and we get so used to that we don't even know what free feels like. And so, for
Yes.
everyone watching, I just challenge you to question everything, like what your the demons that you're with, so to speak, right? Because
Mhm.
man, until you're free, I just recently just interviewed somebody before you. This is my second podcast today, and that's what she was telling me. Once she got delivered, it's like, oh my gosh, this lightness, and very few people can relate to that. Um, so I'm curious. You've been recently baptized. Now you left that
Yes.
lifestyle. A lot of people watching this show, they're always. Somebody recently left a comment saying how, it's wonderful we hear this story how someone was in the darkness and they had their come to Jesus moment. But how do you move forward with maintaining that relationship with Jesus? I'm curious. What are some things that you're doing that helps you to keep on that straight and narrow path?
Yeah. Something that my grandfather kind of gave me tips on is like talk to God like he's your father. Of course, mind your words. You don't want to be cussing or like using foul language,
Right.
you know. Watch what you say, but you want to speak to God like he's your father. God truly wants what's best for us. Um, Something my grandfather also told me one time is like sometimes God takes things out of your life not to punish you, but because maybe he saw something you didn't see, or maybe there's something much better and he thinks you'd be a better fit in this place versus that place. You know what I mean? I think part of building my faith has honestly been just, like, talking to God and, like, putting my hands up because in the past, when I was practicing those things, it was all about control for me. And even to this day, sometimes I have moments where I'm like, "Okay, I'm trying to control everything. I'm sorry, God, let me get out of your way." That's kind of how I think about it.
Mm.
Mhm.
Preach, preach. I love that. I made this practice. Now I do it regularly. As soon as my alarm rings in the morning, I roll over on my knees and I try to go through all the things I'm thankful for first thing in the morning.
Mhm.
And then I
Yes.
kind of do like, I ask God, look, put people on my path, open doors for people to minister to and being ministered to as well. And just basically
Yes.
submitting 100% to Him. Lord, I don't know what I need to be doing, but you do. And so I just pray that you guide me throughout this day, protect me, and just kind of like in a regular way. And it's not over spiritualizing, just like a quick sentence or two. Just like as soon as the
Yeah.
day is starting, I'm rolling on my knees and I'm like, Lord, I give this day to you. It's yours. Take it. You lead me, you guide me, guard me, put people on my path. And I think that's a good practice too. That, I remember this was, gosh, years ago. I was with Operation Christmas Child. I received a shoebox when I was 9 years old. And so when I worked for Billy Graham as a web designer developer, I happened to mention to them that I received a shoebox. And so they asked me to share my testimony from time to time. And it was an amazing experience for like, I
Mhm.
don't know, 7 years, some plus I shared my story. But I remember one time being in a hotel room we're at this national conference for Operation Christmas Child, and me and another shoebox recipient, he's from Africa, and we were both sharing the room. And I'll never forget this. First thing in the morning, such a godly man, this young man, and went through so much hardships, as you can imagine. As soon as the alarm went off, he rolls on his knees, and he just like, he didn't know I was watching him. He thought I was asleep. And man, I felt the presence of God when he did that.
Oh,
And from then on going forward, I was like, I need to do the same thing, because that was so moving. He was just like submitting 100% himself to you, to God. And he was so
yes.
thankful that he's in America, that he has these opportunities. And I never forgot that experience. But there's something to that. When you wake up first thing in the morning, like you said, talk to him like he's your father. Tell him
Yes.
how anxious you are about the day. If you are, give that anxiety
Yes.
to him. But no, I appreciate you sharing that. It's a simple, but yet a very practical thing. Anything else that people can do as they're living out their lives? What are some things that helping you in your walk?
Honestly, learn about God. Um, there have been times where I'm like, I don't want to read. I'll pray to God and go to bed. But there have been times where I'm like, actually, let me learn about my father. I think that would help our relationship, right? And I go to open the Bible, and the story I'm reading is very like parallel to what I'm actively going through in life. Um, there have been a few times where like I'm praying to God, like in the morning I'd be like, "Thank you. I'm grateful for, being alive today. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for waking me up and believing in me, having faith in me to do whatever you need me to do." And I'll say like, "Oh God, I'm anxious today. Like, I don't know why my stomach hurts. I just have a pit in my stomach. Father, be with me. Don't abandon me." And I'll go and read the Bible later that night, and it'll be something in scripture like, "I'm always with you," or I'm misquoting, but I'm just giving an example. But it's very interesting how God literally uses scripture to talk to us. I think a lot of Christians struggle with like, "Oh, like I don't hear God's voice." And it's like sometimes you're not always gonna quite literally hear God talk to you. It's just you need to literally open the book, and God will talk to you that way. And it's so clear. And you'll be like, "Oh, okay, you're funny, God. I see what you're doing. You're funny because you told me to open up that chapter, and it's giving me advice on what I'm actively going through. Thank you, God."
Well, and another thing most people don't think about is consistency, right? Any relationship, you
Mhm.
want to make somebody insecure, become inconsistent. Like in marriage, I've been married for
Yes.
15 years almost. And yeah, if you're inconsistent in marriage, you're going to make people insecure, your family members, or
Yes.
any relationship. And I think that in this microwave culture, people want just things instant, right? And I think there's
Yes.
something to that, just consistently, doesn't matter how you feel, just keep going to God about everything, include Him in everything. You acknowledge Him in
Mhm.
all your ways. Whatever you're struggling with, instead of, because we get so used, it's like, oh, I got this, I can just I can handle this, and you don't
Right.
realize how much the burden you're carrying is not really meant for you to carry, and it takes a
Mhm.
swipe, like it wears you out. You only have so
It
much bandwidth
does.
throughout the day to work with, and I think that's what I'm now trying to learn to be better. As soon as I've taken on something that's stressful, I'm like, Lord, I give it to you. You give me the unlimited
Mhm.
source of creativity is in me, available at any time if I just submit to Him. Say, Lord, you've created me. You've created all this. You know how this one idea from the Lord can totally transform your life if you let
Yes.
Him. And I remember in business, I was telling my twin brother, uh, throughout, we had some hardships starting business together back in the day, and we kept saying to each other, like, man, we're just one creative idea away from a breakthrough, one creative idea. And sure enough, it was the one creative idea that changed everything for us back then. So for everyone watching, you're just one creative idea from the Lord, from the
Mhm.
unlimited source of creativity, from your one idea from the Lord can change, completely transform your life completely. And something else, the more I'm listening, thinking about your testimony, you were talking about that blood ritual that you were about to do. Can you imagine
Yes.
if you followed through?
I know. I think about it all the time.
What would
I'm so
happen?
grateful I didn't. I'm so grateful because 'cause I've heard horror stories of people doing blood rituals, and it takes a lot to remove demonic forces that have infiltrated quite literally your spirit or body.
I wonder, is there a point of no return for some of these people?
I feel like no one is too far gone for God.
Mm.
I've heard a lot of testimonies, like, people have been through worse than I have, honestly, and I mean, like, people have died, people have literally been possessed, people who were in the church of Satan, God spoke to them and they're like, "Okay, I'm done with this, like, you are real, I'm so sorry for mocking you." Like, I've seen so much just to know that no one is too far gone.
I love
No
that
one
you
is too
said
far
that.
gone.
No one is too far gone. Literally, no one. And God is so merciful. He'll reach you wherever.
He is.
He'll use people, he'll use circumstances. And the longer you wait, the more painful it gets, right? Because it's just,
Yes.
man, why wouldn't you want to be on God's side? Because he's the one that made you. He has a perfect plan for you.
Yes.
And all you have to do is just surrender, die to self. Love that. And something else you mentioned and how kind of started all of this was the hurt from being bullied, right? It's the pain, the suffering that people like a lot of stories that I hear, especially people that dabble into witchcraft, it started with some kind of offense, right? Someone hurt them,
Yes.
someone did something bad to them, and this is their way of repaying evil for evil.
Yes.
Interesting. Unforgiveness opens so many doors.
Unforgiveness really, I mean, it's everywhere in the Bible. God really asks us to forgive for a reason, honestly, because I mean, he probably knows what happens to a soul that is so unforgiving. It starts with that and then it leads to darker sin. It's like a spiral.
And this whole new age thing, in closing, the new age thing is interesting. You're seeing a lot more testimonies, new age to Jesus on YouTube. Like if you just type
Yes.
that, there's so many people coming back. And yeah, because this whole new age movement is just glorifying self, right? It's so easy to get
Yes,
caught
it
up in that.
is.
It's all about you. It's all about me. I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? I'm God. That's pretty much what people are saying.
Yep. I am a god or I'm a goddess. I'm my own god.
Mm. And if you
Yeah.
think about it, the Bible does talk about in the last days, people will be lovers of self. So new age
He
movement is
did.
just that. Well, Summer, in closing, let's say someone is in new age movement right now and they're watching you right now. They're listening to your testimony. They're on their knees right now. They're like, man, I'm guilty. I'm in it. So what would you tell that person?
I would tell them, just admit to God. You can repent right now. Like I said, it's never too late. You're never too far gone. It's okay to realize you've been selfish. I know it's hard to take accountability. It was hard for me. It took me quite some time to take accountability. But you don't even have to carry that burden. God will carry that for you.
Mm. I can't help but think of, you mentioned that example of, gosh, I've interviewed so many people in the last, it's like today, two podcast interviews, and now I can't remember, Summer, if this was you or somebody else that said it. It's all a blur, and I take six, plus phone calls every single day. But I think you mentioned something about coming out and seeing after your deliverance, feeling lighter, and maybe it wasn't you, but
Yes, that was. That was.
that was you? Okay.
Yes.
It's now messing with me. Oh my goodness. I should probably not do two interviews back to back in the same day. But think about this. Those people that are experiencing all this demonic activity, they're just oppressed, right? When you come
Mhm.
to Jesus, he sets you free. It's like you get back to your childlike state. Remember when you were a kid and you were just like in that free, just
Yes.
childlike state? It's not childish, but just feeling, it was a different kind of mindset, just you feeling free. And then
It's
throughout
like
life,
a purity.
yeah, purity, right, right. And then throughout
Yeah.
life, you acquire all these demons, right? It weighs on you.
Yes.
And the world, think about this, the world, like when I was a child, the world was probably worse. I was in Ukraine during the
Oh,
90s, which was the
goodness.
worst time. But as a child, I remember it was like a peace, it was like beautiful, blissful, right? But then when you
Right.
grow older, you learn that the world is not what you thought it was, but it's the knowledge of that. Anyway, so long story short, why would you want to remain in that state, carrying the burden,
Right.
being, uh, have all this weight when really you weren't meant to carry? So I think
Yes.
your cat's trying to get back in now.
I
Is
think
that?
you can hear it.
Yeah. So the cat sounds like you guys need to wrap it up. Well, Summer, thank you so much for your time. Enjoyed this. This was awesome. I'm so excited that we connected together. Appreciate you being obedient, sharing your testimony, and it's going to bless a lot of people. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you for watching. I have another video I want you to see. Up next, my friend Robin Cunningham left his body and he saw heaven, hell, and even Judgment Day. And guess what? It's closer than you think. That video should be coming up on the screen right now. If you don't see it on the screen, check the description below for the link. Until next time, have a great rest of the day, and I look forward to serving you and getting to know you more inside of our free private community over at family.godsvoicetoday.com. Talk soon. Bye-bye.